Choosing light colored woods as in maple, ash, holly, or figured light colored woods as in curly, quilted, spalted, crotch woods, burl woods will give you the most profound chances for success. Avoid dark woods such as walnuts. Dyes will not be as noticeable unless that's a desired effect. You can also use the wood's color, such as this yellow heartwood, as a base color. I'll show you an example of this later in this video. So my basic steps of preparing a pen blank for turning consists of, for these kits, it would be scuffing up the brass tubes, measuring and marking the blank, and then cutting the blank. I selected a soft curly maple wood, which I already cut into pen blank size. I added my aligning marks and centered the ends, drilled both of the through holes, and epoxied the tubes into place. And please feel free to check out my other pen turning videos if you want more details on how I prep my blanks for turning. Then after 24 hours has passed, I will trim up the barrels, chamfer the ends of the tubes, and head over to the lathe and mount the wood on a pen mandrel. I sometimes add offset tapers to my barrels for comfort and so they're not completely straight. And yes, I'm using a rough and gouge from beginning to end, but sometimes I use a skew the same way. An important step in dyeing the wood on your pen blanks is sanding to the proper grit depending on what wood you have. I'll demonstrate this. This is yellow heartwood sanded up to 600 grit. I'm adding a blue alcohol dye and it will not penetrate the surface no matter how many coats I put on. But if I sand up to 180 grit max, then with one coat it soaks in. It does turn green though because of the yellow heartwood. And I will use a rubbing alcohol to clean up any dust or grit on the surface of the wood before I apply any dyes. And another tip is I don't use these non-stick bushings when I'm dyeing. I don't want to transfer dye to another project. I use the regular metal bushings. They clean up easy afterwards. Or you could use painter's tape or masking tapes over the bushings. Or dye the blanks off the lathe. I usually use makeup wedges to apply dyes to pieces, but not for pens. I'll just use a paper towel. I don't need that much coverage. Sometimes when I'm using multicolored dye segmented pieces, I'll use a small paintbrush to apply the dyes. This is a pinkish purple alcohol-based dye, and you can see how well it soaks into the curly maple that was sanded up to 600 grit. So as far as shading, the more coats you use, the darker the color will get. If you use the lathe running, you can have a lighter shade of color or put less coats on. I added 3 coats of this purple and then turned the lathe up to about 2,000 RPMs and burner stir dried the dye. And this step is complete when none of the purple comes off on a clean paper towel. And because these are alcohol dyes, the grain will raise a little bit, so I just take a Scotch-Brite pad and knock some of those fibers down. Then I apply a CA finish. I start with a thin viscosity CA glue, and for your very first coat you will get a little bit of the dye off, but that's okay. You shouldn't see any dye anymore. And once again, if you're interested in more details, please refer to my other pen videos on my CA finish process. And because I didn't use the non-stick bushings, I'm going to cut the ends of the blanks so the glue doesn't stick to the bushings and I could possibly get some chip out on the end. And this yellow heart is the same one that I showed you earlier. Now, I did want to tell you about using the wood color as a base color. So I darkened the pores on this piece by adding a black India ink, a few coats, and then sanded it back. Right before adding 2 coats of this red dye. Then with a Scotch-Brite pad, I feathered certain sections of the pen blanks to expose yellow heartwood with the black ink pores to create a sort of starburst effect. So a couple of my goals for this video was to show you that I do dye some of my pen blanks, and it's a fun thing to do. You don't have to buy exotic woods if you have some dull woods laying around your shop. Whatever you can come up with, you probably can make a color or even a combination colored pen. You can dye these smaller items and just put a regular CA finish over and it'll be fine. I have a couple of dyed pencils myself I've been using for years and I've never had an issue with them. You can combine dyes, you can mix colors, you can use varying techniques. You can use sandpaper to blend colors or make streaks. Absolutely no limits to the imagination and to the creativity of things that you could do with pens and pencils and dye. So as always, stay safe in your shop at all times. Thank you. And take care.